It's Susan from Stratus, and today I'm going to give you tips on what you should be thinking about in the month of November if you're planning to submit applications in round 2, which are early January deadlines. So there are really 6 things that you should be asking yourself right now. The first is, are you at peace with your test? Secondly, is your work experience sufficient and solid? Third, do you have a compelling leadership profile? Fourth, are your recommenders positioned to call you out as being best in class? Fifth, have you connected with the schools that you're applying to? And finally, do you have a compelling narrative? So we're going to go through these 6 things in more detail. Thing number 1, let's drill down on, do you have a test score that you are at peace with? Now, schools truly are test agnostic. You can take the GMAT or the GRE, whichever you are going to perform best on. The test is just one piece of a holistic evaluation, and most importantly, it is an assessment of your preparedness for the rigor of a top MBA program. Now, some people take the test once and they have a great score that's right at the averages of the school, and they're done. Others get something that's even above the averages, but they're not at peace with it. They feel like they've left something on the table. You want to have a score that's possibly within the 80% range of the schools that you're targeting. So if the average GMAT, for example, is on the old scale, a 730, typically the 80% range is 30 or 40 points below and above. So 680 to 760 or 770. If the average for a school is more around the 700 range, then 80% is between 660 and 740, perhaps. On the new scale, where the scores end in a 5 for the GMAT, you're still looking at a 30 to 40 point range above and below for that 80% range. And keep in mind, again, it's a holistic evaluation. If you performed really great in undergrad, meaning you have a 3.8 or higher GPA, then maybe you don't need a test that's above the average. But if your undergrad performance was less than stellar, then you really want to bring a strong test score to show that you're ready for business school. Or you want to show other evidence of your preparedness, perhaps an additional class that is quantitative in nature. Second thing you should be thinking about is your work experience. On average, an incoming MBA student has 4 to 5 years of work experience. About 80% of the students typically have between 3 and 8 years of work experience. Now, everyone's experience is different, but you need to show that you have work experience that's going to allow you to add value in the MBA classroom, and is also going to set you up for success in the recruiting process as you complete your MBA. If you are on the lower end, you need to show that you perhaps have progressed above your peers. Maybe you've plateaued and now is the right time to be getting an MBA. You want to be able to show that you have some experience managing people, projects, and or budgets. And you perhaps want to have shown some promotions within your company, or if you switch jobs, demonstrate that from one role to the next, you are continuing to build skills and knowledge that is accelerating your career towards your career goals. You also need to make sure that you're ready to talk about why now is the right time for business school. And that's especially important if you are outside of that 80% range. So if you are at 2 or 3 years of work experience or above 8 years of work experience. Why is now the time for you to pause your career, go back to school, and retool to move your career forward? Tip number 3 coming up. This time we're talking about, is your leadership profile compelling? Now, what does that really mean? Many people in their place of work, if they're earlier in their career, being 2, 3, 4 years in, are not necessarily leading big teams as part of their job. There are lots of ways you can demonstrate your leadership readiness. It could be leadership roles you had during your time in undergrad. It could be things that you've done outside of work. Perhaps you have a leadership role in a nonprofit organization that you're actively involved in. Perhaps you are still involved in some capacity with a club you participated in during college, And as an alum, you are supporting those who have come behind you. In your place of work, perhaps you don't have leadership responsibility in managing a team, but maybe you're involved with recruiting the next generation of analysts for your company. Maybe you have a leadership role in an employee resource group. Or maybe you're just a thought leader driving forward new ideas in a particular area of expertise. Business schools are in the business of creating the next generation of business leaders. It's important that you started flexing your leadership skills already before you apply so that you can build on those during your time in business school. Tip number 4, most schools are going to be looking for you to submit 2 recommendations. Some allow only 1. You want to pick someone who can speak about you and perhaps call you out as being the best in your class. Who are going to be your champions? Ideally, your current immediate supervisor will be one of the people writing your recommendations, but business schools recognize that perhaps you've only worked with this person for a short period of time, or perhaps letting that individual know that you're thinking about going to business school would jeopardize something in terms of your job. If you are not going to use your current supervisor, you need to make sure to get out ahead of that and use an optional essay or some content in the application itself to explain why you have not chosen your current manager to write a recommendation. And then add a sentence or 2 to establish some credibility for the people you did pick to write your recommendations. You want to make sure that you give your recommenders ample time to write recommendations. I don't recommend you pick more than 2 people. Some people feel like, oh, I'm applying to 8 schools, so I should give 4 to these 2 people and 4 to these 2 people. The heavy lift is in writing the first recommendation. Doing the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th recommendation is about 5 minutes of time. You don't necessarily want to ask 4 people to do 4 applications each. Pick 2 people. It's unlikely that you're going to have 4 who are really your big supporters and your champions. And make sure to provide them with guidance and information before the end of this month. So keep that in mind as you prepare your recommenders to support you in your endeavors. Number 5, you need to be able to articulate not only why you want an MBA and why you want it now, but why you want it from a particular school. And it's really important for almost all schools, Harvard perhaps being that one outlier, that you dig into school research. You can reach out to students, you can reach out to alumni, make sure to explore the curriculum, the clubs, and even the culture and how those things align with what your goals are and what you need to accomplish during your time in business school to put yourself on a path to achieve your goals in the future. One thing that people often miss is trying to understand, not only understand, but be able to communicate how your presence in a particular program will enhance the community, not just during your 2 years in the program, but perhaps what legacy might you leave when you graduate from that program. So 2 pieces to it. What will you take? And second, what will you give? Make sure you can answer those questions for all of the programs as you prepare to submit your applications in round 2. Number 6, perhaps the most important part and the thing that you have the most control over in preparing your applications is putting together a compelling narrative. Now, what does this really mean? It means that you need to have clear short-term goals and long-term goals. And in the short term, it needs to include an industry, a function, and perhaps some target companies, so that someone reading your application has a really good sense of where you are trying to get after you complete a program at their school. And that narrative is what connects your previous experiences, whether they are personal, academic, or professional, through a particular MBA program to those goals that you have for your future. And you need to be school specific. We talked earlier about doing your school research. What are the clubs that you want to be involved in that perhaps align with your professional goals? As you think about the gaps in your skills and your knowledge, what classes do you need to take that are going to help you to fill those gaps and prepare you to be a competitive applicant for the job you are aspiring to post-MBA? Keep in mind that that post-MBA goal should be aspirational yet achievable. You don't want it to be something that you're well qualified for today, because that brings into question why you need an MBA. And you don't want it to be so far out there that after 2 years in business school, you're not even closely qualified for that role. I wish you all the best. Reach out to Stratus if you have questions or would just like to talk about your profile and how we can help you to ensure that you submit the strongest possible applications come January.